My home did not whisper a warning. It roared. One moment I stirred sugar into a thin afternoon coffee. The next a sharp electrical scent lifted from the living room like a match held under my name. I set the spoon down. I opened the door. Smoke met me like a wall. It moved as if it were alive, rushing the curtains, licking the paint, swallowing my breath. Heat pressed my cheeks. The smoke alarm was silent. Its battery had died months ago, and I had promised myself I would change it on Sunday. Sunday never came. I dropped the mug. It shattered and slid under the sofa. I could not see my hands. I heard glass crack somewhere deeper inside the house. I reached for the kitchen phone and the numbers danced while my lungs scraped for air. My name is Loretta Mae Johnson. I am 66. I buried my husband 8 years ago. I raised a son on long shifts and short sleep. I have watched enough summers to know the taste of peaches and enough winters to know the sound of a lonely house. I had never seen a wall move like a hungry animal until that day. I grabbed my purse because the strap was already on the chair as if it had been waiting. I thought of the photograph of Robert on the mantel. I could not reach him. The flames had already stepped onto the hallway walls. The kitchen light popped. The heat sounded like laughter. I pulled the back door. Stuck once. It gave. I ran. Air hit me like cold water. I reached the yard with my purse under one arm and a wet cough in my chest. Smoke rolled from the eaves in dark bands. Sirens rose in the distance. Feet pounded pavement. Mrs. Bernice Holloway from 2 doors down hurried across the grass with a blanket and a prayer. She wrapped me and did not let go. We stood together while my house ate itself. People gather for spectacle and for love. That street held both. Neighbors clutched their phones. Children stood with bikes and wide eyes. A man said my address 3 times as if he did not trust his memory. The truck screamed to a stop. Firefighters hauled lines as if they could pull time back. I sat on the curb. My legs shook so hard the blanket trembled. Coffee had splashed my wrist and cooled into a sticky brown kiss. Time burned faster than wood. The chief walked over with soot on his face and soft eyes. He said ma'am with a gentleness that almost undid me. We did what we could. He did not need to finish. I looked at the black rectangle where my kitchen window used to throw morning light, and knew the sentence was complete. Inside was gone. 42 years of chairs and quilts and birthday candles and quiet Tuesdays gone. I counted what I had saved and found 3 things. My name. My purse. Breath still moving in and out. The water stopped but the hiss did not. Steam hung on the siding like a veil afraid to fall. The chief said electrical, likely a tired living room outlet. I nodded as if I could confirm it. The Red Cross handed me water and a small card with numbers for help. Someone pressed another blanket across my knees. Sirens faded. Afternoon tilted toward gold. The street learned how to be quiet again. Mrs. Bernice would not let me go anywhere else. I slept on her narrow couch under a knit throw that smelled like lavender and starch. Her grandchildren promised to whisper. I stared at the ceiling and watched a hairline crack travel like a river across plain plaster. Now and then I saw Robert standing at that river in his good hat with his hands in his pockets. He did not come closer. Close to midnight I decided. In the morning I would call my son. Marcus is 45. He works as a sales lead for an insurance company. He lives in Ballantyne behind a neat lawn and a red front door that his fiancée chose after months of paint samples. We are not estranged. We are misaligned like a button that still goes through the wrong hole. He sends holiday messages. I send birthday cards with neat cursive and a short prayer. Grief taught me to travel light. Age taught me to do it with dignity. A burned house is not a suitcase you can carry alone. 7 I dialed. He answered on the 3rd ring with a voice already dressed for work. I told him there had been a fire. I told him I was all right. I told him the house was not. He was quiet for one breath. Then he said the words I needed to hear. Come over. We will work it out. Hank Miller, the adjuster, met me at 9 at what used to be my front steps. He wore clean boots and carried a camera and a clipboard with the steady confidence of a man who repeats the same hard truth in many driveways. He moved through rooms that were no longer rooms. He took pictures of a stove that was now a shadow of a stove. He wrote notes about a wall that had become a rumor. I stood where my dining table used to hold birthday cake and listened to the click of his pen. He said total loss like a weather report. He talked about coverage on the structure at $200,000. He talked about depreciation and a deductible that would not be gentle. He talked about likely payout near $90,000. He talked about process and time. Weeks. Inspections. Another visit. He handed me a brochure about additional living expenses that could help with a temporary apartment. My eyes slid off the words. He asked if I had a place to stay. My mouth said yes. My heart said maybe. When he left, I folded the Red Cross blanket into a neat square. The fabric had little arrows woven into it. Every arrow pointed away from the house. I took that as mercy. Called a cab. The ride to Ballantyne stretched longer than 40 minutes. The car smelled like pine cleaner and cologne. My city passed in bright pieces. The corner store where Robert bought the Sunday paper. The diner where the grits were always a little too salty and the waitress always called me sugar. The church that held our wedding and his funeral and my quiet Tuesdays between. I pressed my purse against my side and counted my breaths. Every breath was a small prayer. Lord, make me calm. Lord, help my boy open his door. The neighborhood looked like a magazine that had not learned how to wrinkle. Lawns kept at attention. Mailboxes that matched. Sidewalks without gum. White trim that did not remember dust. The cab stopped at the red door. My chest loosened. Marcus opened before I knocked as if he had been watching through the sidelight. For a heartbeat I saw the baby with milk on his lip and fever in his eyes. Then I saw the man with a smooth watch and a guarded smile. He said Mom and stepped back. I crossed the threshold and the air changed. The entry gleamed. Lemon and a floral note I did not know. The living room was white and glass. The coffee table shone like a second window. His fiancée stood near a chair. Alana. She had the posture of a woman who believes a house can be perfected. She smiled. Polite. Distant. I set my purse on the entry table. I kept my hands folded because the room felt like a museum. Marcus chose the armchair across from me. He did not sit beside me. At first I did not take that personally. I told them what the adjuster said. I spoke the number that tasted like chalk. 90,000. I told them about weeks and inspections. I told them about sleeping on Mrs. Bernice's couch with a remote hidden under the cushion and a toddler laughing at the sun. Then I said the thing as simply as I could. I need to stay here for a little while. It will not be long. I will help with meals. I will keep to one room. They looked at each other. I spoke first. A small lift of the chin. A jaw that tightens. Alana put her hand on Marcus' arm. Her smile softened. Her voice was warm. Loretta, we value our privacy. This home is our sanctuary. We have very demanding schedules. We want to start our life together with healthy boundaries. The words were clean. They would look reasonable printed in a book for couples. In a living room where my knees still shook from fire, they felt like ice. I heard myself answer. I will be quiet. I will keep to one room. I will not bring trouble to your house. Alana leaned forward. This is not about being a bother, she said. It is about space. We need to protect our routine and our peace. Marcus cleared his throat. Mom, he said, maybe an extended stay hotel would be better for everyone. I can help with the first few nights. Something inside me made a sound I never want to hear again. It was small. It was final. I had held him through fevers. I had taught him to ride a bicycle in the church parking lot, and let go only when he shouted that he was ready. I had clapped for a middle school concert that went very long and very off-key. I had helped pay for the books that carried him through college. I had packed a small bag and slept on his sofa the week his first marriage ended so he did not have to be alone. All of that stood at the doorway and watched me learn a new fact. I said I am your mother. It was not a plea. It was a reminder that should not have been needed. He looked away. He said, we want you to be comfortable and independent. We want you to have your own space. Alana nodded and said boundaries again as if it were a bomb. My mouth tasted like soot and lemon cleaner. I stood because movement was the only way to keep from breaking in public. Thank you for your honesty, I said. I understand. Picked up my purse. Marcus stood too. He reached as if to hug me and let his hand fall. I will call you in a few days, he said. As soon as you get settled. Do not worry about the first nights. I will handle it. I said thank you. I said take care. I said you both have a good day. Outside the light was too bright for the way I felt. The window gave back my reflection. A woman in a smoke-scented blouse holding a purse like a lifeline. A jogger nodded. A delivery truck rolled by and someone laughed inside it. I walked to the corner and turned toward the budget hotel near the highway. The air felt colder than the forecast. My feet felt older than my years. The hotel lobby had a jar of peppermints and a plant that looked tired. The clerk slid a key card toward me and a code for the internet on a folded paper. I carried my purse up the stairs because the elevator made a sound that did not inspire trust. The room was a rectangle. A narrow bed. A wobbly chair. A window that stared at another window with the same view. I put my purse on the desk and sat on the bed. The spring spoke in a thin voice. Night arrived with the sound of tires on wet pavement. Voices rose and fell in the hall. Somewhere a television argued with the wall. I lay down and watched the red light on the air unit blink. I tried to pray and ended up listing small mercies. The blanket was clean. My phone could charge. I had my identification and the photograph of Robert tucked in the zip pocket of my purse. Tears came and I did not fight them. There is a difference between crying and drowning. I learned that difference the year Robert died. I remembered and I breathed. Morning asked me to be practical. I met a city inspector at the ruins and signed papers. Paper can feel like progress even when it is only proof. I bought 2 shirts and soft pants at the discount store. I took the bus back to the hotel because frugality is a muscle that still flexes. I ate crackers with peanut butter. I watched a forecast speak of a mild front. The room did not get larger. The bed did not get softer. The hours did not decide to be kind. On the 3rd night I unzipped the inside pocket of my purse and took out a business card that had lived there for decades. The edges were soft with time. The ink was a steady blue. Raymond Ellis. Ellis Development. On the back, in a young hand that once believed time keeps its promises, I had written 3 words. Never forget Loretta. I held the card and felt a memory rise like summer heat from a road. A car hood warm under my hands. A young man with eyes the color of late honey. Talk of buildings that would stand taller than our doubts. I placed the card on the nightstand. I did not call. Not yet. My chest still held motel air. My hair still held a thread of smoke. My son had closed his door to me. My heart was cracked but not broken. I turned off the lamp and lay down. The highway sang the same thin song it had been singing since I arrived. I closed my eyes and let the old card be a small square of light in the dark. Tomorrow would ask me to choose my next breath with courage. Before we continue, if this story has found you, subscribe so you will not miss what comes next. Tell me the city you are listening from. It comforts me to know how far a voice can travel. I did not sleep much that 4th night. The business card on the nightstand felt like a small lighthouse that could not decide if it wanted to save me. Just before 9 in the morning I sat at the small table and looked at the numbers I had written on hotel stationery. The claim number from the adjuster. The number for the Red Cross case manager. The number from my bank. Then the number in blue ink on the old card. I ran my finger over the letters until the paper grew warm. I dialed. A man answered on the 2nd ring. The voice reached me with the weight of years inside it. It had depth and a steady kind of care. I said my name. I said my last name that used to be mine before I married Robert. There was one pause that frightened me. Then he said my name back as if he were saying a prayer he had never forgotten. He asked where I was. He said he would come. I tried to tell him that he did not have to do that. He said to tell him the address and to wait in the lobby. His words were steady. I gave him the address. The call ended and the room grew sharp and bright with a kind of shock that did not hurt. I washed my face at the small sink. I brushed my hair. I put on the new shirt I had bought the day before. The one that made me look like I had made a choice and not a compromise. I packed the purse with the papers the adjuster had given me, and the folded photograph of Robert in his good hat. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the highway sing its thin metal lullaby. 10 minutes later I saw a silver car pull under the awning. I stood. My knees tried to remind me of my age. I told them to behave. He stepped out of the car and the years stepped out with him. Raymond Ellis had broader shoulders than the boy I had once loved. His hair had surrendered to silver at the temples. His eyes had not changed. They were the color of late honey in early evening. He looked up and saw me through the glass. His mouth softened. He did not rush. He opened the door for me and he did not ask for permission to be kind. I tried to say I am sorry for calling you after so long. The words tangled. He said that he had been waiting for my voice for a very long time. I told him there had been a fire. I told him that I was safe. I told him that I had lost almost everything. I told him that my son had asked me to choose independence over the shelter of his living room. I watched his face while I said those things. I did not see pity. I saw attention. It is a rare thing to be looked at as if you are a person and not a problem. We drove with the radio turned low. I did not ask where we were going. He said home and I let that word be a soft blanket around my shoulders. Buildings slid past the windows and gave way to stretches of green. He asked about the claim and I told him what the adjuster had said. I told him about a brochure for additional living expenses. He asked if I had anyone to help read the fine print. I told him that I had done my own taxes for decades, but that grief made numbers slide around like fish on a dock. He said he knew a woman named Patrice who had helped many families navigate insurance after storms and fires. He asked if I would be comfortable speaking with her. I said yes. The drive settled into a rhythm that sounded like a promise. I told him about Robert in a few simple sentences. I told him about our apartment that grew into a house. I told him about one child and one long marriage that wore thin at the edges and still held. He told me a little of his business. He told me he had built things that lasted. He did not tell me that he was rich. The car told me what he did not say. The gloves in the side pocket told me that he had learned to keep good things in good condition. His hands on the wheel told me that he had not forgotten where he came from. The iron gate at the end of the drive had a small plaque with his family name. The turn under tall trees felt like a breath drawn deep after too long underwater. The house came into view. It was stone and wood and glass. It did not shout. It spoke in a low voice about patience and work. Inside, the floors were warm underfoot, and the light was the kind that flatters faces and the truth. He carried my purse as if it were a box of letters. He showed me the guest room and left me to sit with the shape of my life shifting around me. I looked out the window at a stand of oaks and felt the first honest piece of calm since the fire. We sat at a kitchen table that could have been in a magazine if the magazine had remembered that kitchens are for food and not only for photographs. He cooked. He moved like a man who had not waited for other people to feed him. He asked me to talk and then he listened. I told him about Marcus. I told him that my son had been careful and capable since childhood. I told him that care without warmth becomes a kind of glass. You can see through it. You cannot live through it. I told him that Alana had been polite. I told him about the word sanctuary and the word boundaries and how they can be used to protect love or to excuse distance. He said we will get you stable. He said we will read every line of that policy. He said we will make a plan that does not depend on the kindness of people who are not ready to be kind. The word we felt like a hand at the small of my back guiding me down a dark hall toward a light switch. Patrice joined us by video that afternoon. She wore a navy sweater and competence like armor. She said to gather documents. Policy. Letters from the adjuster. Photographs of the damage if I had any. Receipts from the motel. She explained additional living expenses in clear steps. If the policy includes ALE, the insurer can cover reasonable temporary housing, meals beyond a normal grocery bill, and some incidentals while the home is uninhabitable. She suggested we request clarity on the ALE limit and the process for direct billing to a landlord or a hotel to avoid large upfront costs. She said to ask the adjuster to put the uninhabitable status in writing. She said to request a copy of the fire department report once it was filed. She looked at me through the camera and said that paperwork is a kind of mercy. It takes pain and gives it a shape that someone has to respond to. I nodded and wrote down each item. She asked where I was staying. I told her. She said that was fine for a day or two, but that we would aim for a small apartment or an extended stay with a kitchenette. She said that my independence mattered as much as my safety. She said she could conference with the adjuster the next morning if I wanted. I said yes please. After the call I stepped out to the back porch. The air smelled like cut grass. Birds fussed at a feeder as if their opinions mattered more than our plans, and perhaps they did. Raymond came out with 2 glasses of water and we sat without talking for a while. The quiet was not empty. It was a place to put things down. When I went back inside I pulled my purse from the chair and spread the papers on the table. I made 3 tidy stacks. Claim. Expenses. Identification. I added a page from the hotel with my name and dates. I added the cab receipt. I added the slip from the discount store where I had bought the 2 shirts and the soft pants. I added the brochure about ALE and underlined 2 sentences. Raymond brought a small folder and labeled it with my name. He wrote the date at the top in neat block letters. I felt something inside me sit up and smooth its dress. That evening we talked about how to speak to Marcus next. Raymond did not tell me what to do. He asked questions that showed me where I was standing. Did I want to try again for his guest room? No. Did I want to accept money from him for the hotel? Not now. Did I want to tell him where I was staying? Yes, but not yet. I wanted to tell him that I was safe. I wanted to tell him that help had arrived. I wanted to tell him that I still loved him. That last sentence sat in my throat and would not come out. I decided to say it later, when I could say it without sounding like a woman begging to be taken back. I slept that night under a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar and soap. I dreamt of walls that did not move. Morning brought coffee and emails. Patrice had already written to the adjuster with a simple list of requests. She copied me. She asked for the uninhabitable status in writing. She asked for confirmation of ALE coverage and limits. She asked for a direct contact in the housing department of the insurer. Hank replied within an hour with a short note. He would request the letter from his supervisor and send the department contact after lunch. He attached a preliminary report that used the phrase likely electrical failure and listed my home as not safe for occupancy pending repair or rebuild. I printed the email on the small printer in the study and placed it in the folder. Paper that says not safe can break your heart. It also clears a path. Raymond drove me back to Charlotte to retrieve the small safe from the ruins. The fire department had told me I could come by when the scene was clear. I wore heavy shoes. The house did not look like a house. It looked like a story that had been told to a cruel end. We stepped carefully. The safe sat low and black under a shelf that had fallen in a tired way. Raymond lifted it with both hands. I carried a small bag with a few salvage things. A ceramic bird that had lost its tail. A brass picture frame that had turned from gold to a softer brown. We stood in the doorway and I said goodbye. It is important to say goodbye even to wood and plaster. On the drive back we stopped by Mrs. Bernice for a quick visit. She brought me a small tin. Inside were index cards she had gathered after the fire. On the top card she had written your recipes, just the ones I had copied for her over the years. She said she did not know what had survived and what had not. I cried in her small kitchen with the lemon curtains and the magnet collection that looked like a tiny road trip. She told me that the neighborhood had opinions about many things. She told me that some folks had said that Alana was careful with Marcus in a way that did not feel like love. She told me that a friend in the homeowners group had mentioned that the couple had been managing some debt from a previous remodel, and that stress makes people put on hard coats. She told me this, then she put her hand on mine and said, "Do not make that your excuse for them." I said I understood. I tucked the recipe tin into my bag like a treasure. Back at the house in Atlanta we made lunch. After we ate, I opened my phone and looked at my messages. I scrolled through the thread with Marcus and saw what I already knew. Holidays. Short notes. A photograph of a new grill. A link to a house paint sample. A thank you for a birthday card. There were no sentences with weight. I took a deep breath and typed one. I wrote, I am safe. I have temporary shelter. I am getting help with my claim. I will update you after I speak with the company about housing. I ended with love, Mom. I did not say where I was. I did not ask to come back. I put the phone down and practiced breathing in for 4 counts and out for 6 until the urge to add more words passed. That evening I sat with Raymond in the study and looked through a box of old photographs he kept in a lower drawer. He handed me one I had never seen. It was a picture of us on the hood of his first car. A tired little coupe that had rescued us from more than one boring party in our 20s. My hair was a halo in the sun. His arm was slung behind me on the metal that had already cooled in the evening. I asked why he had kept that particular picture, printed in the soft color of film that has lived a long time. He said that the mood in it had carried him through long nights. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. Patrice called the next morning with news. The insurer had confirmed ALE. The limit was enough to cover a modest apartment for several months while the claim progressed. She had secured a contact who could arrange direct payment to a property manager, so that I would not carry the cost on a personal card. She suggested 2 apartment communities within a practical drive of my neighborhood, both with first-floor units. She had also placed a request with the fire department for the final report once it was approved. She told me she would join me for the apartment visits if I wanted. I felt a knot in my chest loosen. Paperwork had turned into possible doors. Doors are a mercy. I thanked her. After the call, I looked at Raymond. He smiled the kind of smile that opens the day. We decided to drive back up the next afternoon to tour the apartments. He called a friend who knew one of the property managers. He did not ask for favors. He asked for clarity about availability and accessibility. He took notes in a small notebook that fit inside his palm. I watched his hand move and thought about how competence can be its own kind of affection. That afternoon, while the laundry turned in a quiet machine, I opened my phone again and searched public pages. I do not believe in digging through private matters. I do believe in reading what people say out loud about themselves. Alana used her name as a small brand. Photographs in cream sweaters. A cappuccino beside a laptop. Captions about rhythm and wellness and morning pages. I scrolled. I saw a post from the week after the fire. A picture of a candle and a blanket and a line about the sacredness of routine. The last sentence read, "Do not let anyone pull you out of your sanctuary." Comments sprinkled heart emojis. I put the phone down. I stood at the sink and ran water over my hands until my throat loosened. I dried my hands and reminded myself that public statements do not always reveal private hearts. Then I reminded myself that sometimes they do. In the evening, the phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize from Charlotte. I answered. It was the Homeowners Association secretary who knew Mrs. Bernice and who had heard about my situation. She spoke with the quick kindness of a woman who had practiced it. She said that several neighbors wanted me to know that they were organizing a meal train once I had a temporary place. She said that a few people had also mentioned hearing raised voices from Marcus' porch the day I left, and that she hoped I would not take cruel words as the final truth. I thanked her. I asked her to tell the neighbors that their kindness tasted like water after a long walk. We ended the call and I sat for a moment with my hands folded, steadying the feeling that tried to rise. That feeling was not shame. It was grief trying to dress up as anger. In the morning we drove to Charlotte and toured 2 apartments. The first one faced a pond with ducks that did not mind an audience. The second one looked at a quiet patch of grass with a bench that would be perfect for reading. Both had small kitchens, clean floors, and windows that knew how to hold light. The property manager at the second place spoke gently when I told her why I needed a short lease. She said her mother had been through a flood. She said that temporary can still feel like home when you bring your own mugs. I liked her. I liked the bench. Patrice met us in the office and helped complete the forms. She sent the documents to the insurer while we were still sitting there. We left with a tentative move-in date of next week. It felt like a miracle that had been built from emails and patience. On the way back, we stopped at the old lot one more time. I picked up a small piece of brick and put it in my purse. It was not a shrine. It was a reminder that I had survived. That evening we ate soup and bread at the kitchen table and watched the sky let go of the day without regret. The next morning my phone held a voicemail from Alana. She must have called late. The message began with her breath and ended with her opinion. She said that she was sorry about the fire. She said that she wanted to support Marcus and the life they were building. She said that she believed in boundaries and that the last thing their home needed was drama. She said that extended stay hotels were very clean now. She said she hoped I would find a place that fitted my needs and that she wished me peace. Then she laughed in a small way, as if she had just remembered a line from a show, and she hung up. I listened to it twice. I saved it. I did not send it to anyone. I sat very still and told myself 3 things. 1, I would not let that message plant bitterness in my house. 2, I would not pretend that it was kind. 3, truth has its own legs and sooner or later it walks into the room. I called Marcus that afternoon. I told him that I had found a temporary apartment with help from the insurer. I told him that I was safe and not to worry about the first weeks. He asked where I was staying and who was helping me. I said that an old friend had driven me to look at places. I said that a community lawyer was guiding me through the policy. He was quiet for a moment and then he said that he was glad I had help. He said he wanted to come see me once I was settled. He said that he had been under pressure. He said that everything had happened fast. He did not apologize. I did not force him to. That would come later or it would not. I ended the call and looked at the folder on the table. I added the apartment paperwork and a small sticky note that said bench faces east. It helps to keep track of the details that make life feel like life. That evening, Raymond asked if I would like to attend a midweek gathering at his church the following week. It was a conversation circle about caring for elders after illness or loss. He said that the pastor invited stories, not performances. He said that people came to share ways to do better. He said there would be tea and cookies baked by a woman named Ruth who made ginger snaps that could make a skeptic believe. I said that I would consider it. I told him that I did not want to turn my pain into a show. He said that testimony is not a show when it is given in service of community change. He said that sometimes a room full of gentle eyes can break the spell of shame. I said that I would think about it and pray on it. He said that prayer is also a plan. 2 days later, Patrice emailed the final fire report. Electrical failure at a living room outlet. Not safe for occupancy. The words were cold and necessary. She added a short note at the top. I know this is hard to read. This document is also a key. Use it. She had also forwarded a confirmation from the insurer that the apartment could be paid directly, along with the amount approved for meals beyond a normal grocery bill for the first month. She had copied the property manager who responded with a welcome to our community. I printed each email and filed it. The folder had grown enough to need a second clip. I made a list that evening to settle my mind. Things I had lost. Things I had kept. Things I had gained. Loss was a long list. Chairs that held conversations. A quilt from my grandmother. The recipe box with notes in 4 different hands. Kept was a short list. My name. My purse. A photograph. A friend who had not forgotten me. Gained was unexpected. A plan. Place to go. Proof on paper. A room where I could sleep without counting the noises in the hall. I called Mrs. Bernice and told her about the apartment. She made a small happy noise and said that she would bring a plant and 3 wooden spoons and a pan that did not stick. She said that a few neighbors from church had asked if they could drop off freezer meals once I moved in. I said yes please and thank you. She said that Eli from the barbershop had told everyone to behave on the internet and remember that compassion is not content. I laughed for the first time in too many days. She reminded me that joy is a muscle. Use it or it forgets its job. That night I sat on the back porch with Raymond and told him a small story from when Marcus was 6. He had brought home a class pet for the weekend. A small turtle in a plastic case that looked like a tiny stadium. He had guarded that turtle as if he had invented turtles. On Sunday night the turtle went missing. We searched the apartment. We found it under the couch eating a piece of lettuce with the slow patience of a creature that had known the world long before our panic. Marcus cried with relief. I told Raymond that I wanted to believe my son was still the boy who cried when the turtle returned. He said that sometimes grown men have to be shown their boy selves again by people who remember them. He said that truth is not a weapon when you love the person you are bringing it to. It is a mirror. You hold it steady and hope he looks long enough. In the morning I packed a small bag and we drove to the apartment to sign the last pages and pick up the keys. The property manager walked us through the unit. The kitchen was small but well arranged. The bedroom window faced that east bench. I could already see myself there with a mug in hand. We tested the smoke detector together and she showed me where the batteries go. We smiled at each other in a way that said we both knew what we were doing. I set the first mug in the cupboard and placed the folded photograph of Robert on the dresser. I put the recipe tin from Bernice on the counter. I put the folder with the papers in the top kitchen drawer. I have learned that important things should live at hand. I sat on the bench outside and watched the light spill through a row of trees and felt a small piece of peace settle into my lap. On the drive back to Atlanta that afternoon, I asked Raymond if he ever felt angry on my behalf. He said yes and that he learned long ago to let anger do its job and then send it to its room. He said that what helps is a plan. He said that if I wanted, after I had slept 2 good nights in the apartment, we could talk about how to hold a truthful conversation inside a circle that would not turn into a fight. He said that he would sit in the back and keep quiet. He said that love sometimes means being the quiet in the room while someone else says what needs saying. That night we ate chicken and dumplings. I cooked. He peeled carrots. We moved like two people who had known each other for a long time and had decided to try again with more wisdom. After dinner we stood in the doorway of the study and looked at the framed things on the wall. He had photographs of buildings at different stages. He had a sketch from a child who had drawn a very square house with very large windows and labeled it Mr. Ray Home. He had a small frame with a faded ticket stub from an outdoor concert where we had once danced until our feet forgot that they were tired. I slept well. In the morning I woke with the sense that the ground under me was solid. I said thank you out loud. I brewed coffee. I read the apartment rules and made notes about trash days in the laundry room. I wrote to Patrice to thank her again. She wrote back and said that she had spoken with a community center director who would be hosting a forum on family care after crisis in 2 weeks. She said there would be a panel, a short talk by a social worker, and time for testimonies. She asked if I would be willing to share 3 minutes about what had helped and what had hurt. She said I could decline. She said she was asking because she had a sense that my voice would help someone else stand up. I closed the email and thought for a long time. I wrote back and said maybe. I said I would decide after I moved into the apartment and had a chance to breathe there. She sent a smile and words and said that was perfect. Later that day my phone rang again. It was Marcus. He asked how I was. I said I was moving into a temporary place in 2 days. He said he wanted to see it. He said he wanted to bring something. He asked what I needed. I said a small lamp and a set of towels would be useful. He said he would take care of it. He said he was sorry that the first day had gone the way it had. The apology sat on the table between us like a dish that you are not sure was meant for you. I said thank you. I said I would text him the address and a time. After we ended the call I sat for a while with my hands around my coffee mug. I thought about the circle at the community center. I thought about the bench that faced east. I thought about the old card on the nightstand in the motel. I thought about the word sanctuary and how easy it can be to build a small one and how hard it can be to open the door. I called Raymond into the kitchen and told him that I would speak at the forum. He nodded. He did not cheer. He asked what I would want with me when I spoke. I said I would want the folder. I said I would want the recipe tin on the counter at home to remind me that nourishment is a kind of testimony. I said I would want the small piece of brick in my purse to remind me that I had walked through fire and did not dissolve. Before we end this part of the story, let me ask you something. If you have ever had to turn paperwork into a path, if you have ever had to ask for help and found it in an unexpected place, tell me the city you are listening from. Your voice reminds me that no one stands alone when we tell the truth about what hurt and what healed. I moved into the apartment on a Monday that smelled like rain. The property manager handed me a small envelope with the keys and a welcome note that felt kinder than most welcome mats. Raymond carried the boxes from the trunk and arranged them in a thoughtful order by the kitchen counter. He asked where I wanted the dishes. I said lower shelf. He asked where I wanted the mugs. I said next to the sugar. He asked where I wanted the folder with the papers. I said top drawer to the right of the stove. We worked until the small place breathed with a rhythm that felt like mine. I stood at the window and watched the bench face the morning light. The bench looked like a teacher. Sit. Learn how to be still. The air was clean. The silence had space in it. There was relief. There was also a steadiness that felt like a hand on my back. The kind that holds you up and does not push. I made coffee and set 2 mugs on the counter. Raymond leaned against the doorframe and waited for me to speak first. He has that way of giving quiet that makes a room generous. I said I wanted to speak at the forum. I said I wanted to speak in a way that did not make a show of my pain, but put the truth in a place where it could not be ignored. He nodded. He said that was good. He said that if I brought my documents, then the room would meet the facts and not only the story. He said that a story with documents grows a spine. That afternoon we met Patrice at her office. Her desk held neat stacks and a plant that had survived many winters. She listened. She wrote a few words on a legal pad. She asked me to tell the story as if I had 10 minutes. I spoke. She stopped me only to ask for dates. She circled a few moments that she called points of proof. The adjuster visit and his notes. The email that called the home not safe for occupancy. The confirmation of additional living expenses. The apartment lease. The voicemail from Alana. She said the voicemail would not be the center. The center would be need met with refusal. The center would be the use of words like sanctuary to keep a door closed. The center would be the difference between boundaries and abandonment. She handed me a simple outline. Start with the fire. Use 1 or 2 sensory details. Speak the number that made you swallow, which is the 90,000 expected so far. Then speak the ask. You went to your son and you asked for shelter. Use the word shelter. Then the refusal. Quote the line about privacy and boundaries once. Pause. Do not argue with it. Then name what helped. Call the Red Cross by name. Name the adjuster and the letter that says not safe. Name the policy section for additional living expenses. Name the people who helped you read the lines. Name the neighbor who did not let you sleep alone the first night. Then the decision. You chose not to fight in a living room. You chose to bring the facts to a room that believes in truth. End with your request. Ask the room to help other families build plans, so that an elder is not left at a motel with a key card and a prayer. She smiled and said, speak it as if you are writing a check with your voice and you want it to clear. She said that when a witness brings calm facts to a circle, anger has nowhere to sit. We walked out into a soft blue afternoon. Raymond asked if I wanted to rehearse that night. I said yes. We picked up a rotisserie chicken and a small salad. We ate at my small table with the good napkins Bernice had slipped into my bag. After dinner we practiced. He sat on the couch with the folder on his lap. He raised a hand when a sentence went on too long. He lowered his hand when I landed a point clean. I learned to watch his eyes. When they warmed, I knew the line had landed. When they cooled, I knew I was circling and needed to put the sentence on the ground. The next morning I wrote a letter to Marcus. I wanted to avoid a fight that would spill into the forum. I also wanted to avoid surprise that would turn him defensive before the truth had a chance to be heard. I wrote that I would speak at a community forum about caring for elders after crisis. I wrote that I would share my experience with the fire and the aftermath. I wrote that I would try to speak in a way that honored our family. I invited him to attend. I told him that I would be grateful if he listened, and that I would welcome his voice during the open time if he chose to share his lessons. I did not use the words blame or shame. I did not use words that accuse. I did use the word truth 3 times. I sealed the letter in a plain envelope and asked Raymond to drive me to Marcus' house. I slid the envelope under the door. I stood for a moment on the porch that had seen me leave with a pocket full of shakes. The same lemon and floral scent lived inside. The door did not open. The porch did not remember me. We drove away. 2 days later Marcus called. He said he had gotten the letter. He said that he was not sure what I planned to say. He said that he would attend but that he would not be comfortable with a public confrontation. I said this was not a confrontation. I said this was a circle for stories that could help other families do better. I said that if he attended it would send a message that our family meant to be honest and learn. He said nothing for a long breath. Then he said he would come. He said Alana would join him. I said that would be fine. I said that I would be seated near the aisle. I said I would save them a place. We ended the call politely, like 2 people finishing a meeting that had gone as well as it could go. That evening a message arrived from Alana. She said she respected my desire to process. She said she believed healing happens in private. She said that she wanted to support Marcus. She said that words can be used like weapons. She said she hoped I would choose a path of grace. She forgot to ask how I was. I chose not to answer. The day before the forum, Patrice stopped by with a slim binder that looked like something carried into a boardroom. The front pocket held a simple title page with my name and the date. Inside she had arranged the documents in the order of the outline. Each page had a small tab with a short label. Claim. Not safe letter. LE confirmation. Lease. Receipts. She had added a 1-page summary of the policy sections that mattered, printed in large clear type. She said this is your shield. She said that when nerves rise you can touch the tabs and remember that the story is also a sequence of facts. Raymond handed me a small index card with 6 short lines. They were phrases that fit in the mouth like pebbles that keep a rhythm. I tried them aloud. Boundaries protect love. Boundaries do not excuse abandonment. Sanctuary is not a room. Sanctuary is a choice. Paper is a mercy when you have to turn pain into a plan. My voice found the shape of those sentences and they began to feel like mine. That night I cooked chicken and dumplings and packed a small container for Bernice as a thank you for the recipe rescue. The kitchen filled with the smell of broth and thyme, and the low comfort that rises from a pot that knows what it is doing. Cooking steadied my hands. Memory steadied my heart. I set 3 bowls. Raymond said the dish tasted like home. I thought that was the point. I slept, and when I woke in the dark with the old tightness in my chest, I sat on the bench outside and watched a ribbon of light set itself on the edge of the world. Morning comes even to people who feel used up. Morning does not ask for proof first. The forum took place on a Thursday evening at a community center room that had once been a fellowship hall. Folding chairs waited in neat rows. A table in the back held a plate of cookies and a tray of cups with tea that smelled like lemon. A banner on the wall said families that tell the truth help each other stand. People came in wearing the faces of those who have known loss. Some carried folders. Some carried only their bodies and the stories those bodies held. Rev. Curtis Coleman opened with a short prayer. He thanked God for breath. He thanked God for ears. He asked for gentleness. He said that we would share only what belongs to us. He said that we were here to build a path, not to point a finger. The room said amen in a soft chorus. I felt brave enough to remain seated. A social worker spoke for 8 minutes about common gaps after crisis. She said that many families do not understand their policies. She said that many elders do not know that there is a provision called additional living expenses. She said that many relatives want to help but avoid discomfort and then regret it. She did not use any names. She used words like pattern and lesson and plan. She finished with a small story about a grandmother whose church friends created a rotation for supper and rides while the house was repaired. She said real help is ordinary and repeatable. Then the testimonies began. 2 people spoke before me. A man in his 50s who had to move his mother after a flood and learned about mold the hard way. A woman who moved in with her sister during a treatment cycle and learned that kindness requires a schedule. Then my name was called. My knees made their opinion known. I stood anyway. I carried the binder, a pen, the index card, and a small cloth handkerchief that used to live in my church purse. I began with the fire in one detail. The smoke alarm did not sound. I said the battery had died and I had promised I would replace it on Sunday. Sunday never came. I said those 3 words slowly. A few heads nodded. I spoke the number that had sat heavy in my mouth. The adjuster estimate was around 90,000 so far. It was not the whole of the house and it was not nothing. I told them I had asked my son for shelter. I used the word shelter in a little while. I said he and his fiancée offered an extended stay hotel and spoke kindly about privacy and boundaries. I said they wanted to protect their routine and their peace. I did not mock those words. I let them sit in the air. I opened the binder and spoke the parts of the policy that had become a stepping stone. Additional living expenses. Reasonable temporary housing while the home is uninhabitable. A letter from the insurer that uses the words not safe for occupancy. A copy of the short lease for a small apartment with a bench that faces the east. I said the names of people who had helped me. The Red Cross team. The adjuster who wrote me into a system that could respond. Patrice who read the print. The property manager who walked through the apartment and checked the smoke alarm with me. Mrs. Bernice who gave me a recipe tin as a way of reminding me that life is fed by both documents and dinner. I took one breath and spoke the line about sanctuary. Sanctuary is not a room. Sanctuary is a choice. Sanctuary lives in how we hold one another when the worst happens. Boundaries are holy when they protect both sides. Boundaries are empty when they are used to close the door on a person who has just lived through smoke and fear. I did not raise my voice. The room leaned toward me. I said the last part as a request. I asked that every person in the room build a plan before crisis comes. Put additional living expenses on your refrigerator. Put the adjuster contact in your phone. Decide who will host the first night if a house is lost. Decide who will pick up a prescription if a wallet burns. Decide how to keep a spare set of keys off-site. I said that planning is a love language. I thanked the room for listening and I sat. When I sat, I saw Marcus in the back row. He had come in while I was speaking. He sat with his hands clasped and his face held still. Alana sat beside him with a scarf around her neck and a look that tried to be neutral. I did not know what they thought. I only knew that ears had been present. Sometimes that is the work. The moderator opened the floor for questions. A woman asked how to talk about money without making it an argument. A man asked whether a grown child should move a parent in or pay for an apartment. The social worker answered with, if your house can hold someone with dignity, do it. If it cannot, pay for a place that can. The pastor added that either choice should be made in conversation, and with a time frame. No one should be parked in a spare room without a plan to return to a life that fits. Then the moderator asked if any family members in the room wanted to speak to what they had learned. Marcus stood. He looked taller than I remembered. He swallowed. He said he had heard words tonight that hurt. He said he had also heard words that helped. He said he had chosen routine over mercy. He said he was sorry. He did not look at me, which made the apology sound truer. He looked at the room and said he did not want to be the man who sent his mother to a motel. He said he was learning about how fear dresses up as words like privacy when what it really means is I am afraid of disruption. He said he wanted to do better. The room was quiet in a way that had weight. The moderator thanked him. He asked if anyone else wanted to share. Alana stood. She said she believed in mental health. She said she believed a home must be protected. She said that a person has a right to quiet. She said that families are messy and that sometimes boundaries are the only way to keep a relationship safe. Then she said that she was sorry for her tone. She said that she had been scared of becoming responsible for something big. She said that she had let that fear decide for her. She sat down. People shifted. The pastor nodded once. After the session, people came up to touch my arm and thank me. One woman pressed a small envelope into my hand with a gift card inside and said, "Use this for good coffee." I smiled and promised I would. Marcus came forward and stood at a respectful distance. He said, "Thank you for how you said it." He said that he had expected me to swing at him. He said I had held up a mirror instead. I said that I had brought my facts because facts do not throw punches. They ring like a bell. We walked out into the night air, which had a little bite. Alana stood near the steps and looked as if a long day had taken off its shoes. She said she was sorry again. I said I heard her. I said that kindness has a sound. I said that I would know it when I heard it again. She nodded and did not argue. Marcus said he would come by tomorrow with the lamp and towels. I said that would be fine. On the drive back, Raymond did not speak first. He held the wheel with steady hands and let the night settle. When he did speak, he said the line I hoped to hear. You did not hurt him. You hurt the part of him that needed to be hurt. The part that believes comfort is sacred, even when someone is standing outside the door with smoke in her hair. I breathed out and found that my ribs moved easier. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the apartment with a lamp that was nicer than mine and towels that were soft. He placed the lamp on the table and plugged it in. He stood there and watched the light. He said he had replayed that first day 100 times. He said that he had let fear of disruption make him smaller than he wanted to be. He said he was sorry in a voice that made me believe him. I said I forgave him and that forgiveness would be tested by the days to come. I said that we would not go backward. We would go forward into a relationship with clearer lines. He asked what that meant. I said it meant that I would not move into his house and he would not manage my days. I said it meant that he would visit and help with paperwork when asked and that we would both bring our whole selves to conversations. He nodded. He asked if there was anything else I needed. I said yes. I said I needed him to look at me and see the woman who raised him, not a problem to be solved. He nodded again and I saw the boy who cried when the turtle came back. That afternoon, Patrice called with an idea. She said that since the forum went well, the church would host a follow-up circle in 2 weeks focused on practical steps for families. She asked if I would sit on a small panel with a social worker and a property manager to talk about getting from panic to plan in the first 72 hours after a crisis. She said 3 minutes would be enough. I said yes. I wanted the next part of this road to be about building, not only about repair. Raymond and I started a new ritual. Every morning we sat at the bench for 10 minutes in stillness. Then we went inside and did 15 minutes of paperwork or planning. It might be a call to a contractor for an opinion on cost to rebuild. It might be a list of what to replace first when the next check arrived. It might be a note to the insurer with a gentle question about timeline. It might be a thank you card to a neighbor. 10 minutes of stillness. 15 minutes of plan. This set the day in a way that gave time a shape. In the quieter hours, I drafted a letter to myself. I wrote that revenge did not live in breaking someone else. Revenge lived in the strength to put the truth in daylight and refused to carry shame that was not mine. I wrote that my dignity did not depend on an open guest room. I wrote that the circle at the community center had burned away some old fog in my chest. I folded the letter and put it inside the binder. Documents and dinner and letters. These were my tools now. A week later, Patrice invited me to a small prep session for the second forum. We met with the property manager who had smiled at me when I tested the smoke alarm. She brought a simple checklist. It began with 3 things that are often lost or too damaged to use: identification, prescriptions, and proof of address. It listed where to request replacements. The social worker added a few more. Place the Red Cross number on your refrigerator. Keep 1 small copy of your policy in a binder and 1 scanned in your email. Keep a flash drive with copies at a friend's house. I asked if that was too much. She said it was a plan. Plans look like too much until the day you need them. Marcus texted me later that night and asked for a copy of the checklist. He added a sentence that made me set the phone down and smile. He wrote, "I am learning." I wrote back, "I see that." We kept it simple. Simple is sometimes the most honest way. 2 days later, Alana sent me a message that did not try to dress up. She wrote, "I am sorry for how I spoke. I was afraid of losing control over my life and I pressed the wrong lever." She wrote, "I would like to bring a meal if you will have it." I stared at that line and heard my mother voice say, "Take the food and see how the next visit goes." I wrote back yes and asked if she could come Sunday afternoon. She said yes. She brought a casserole that tasted good and sat on my table as if it had always belonged there. We talked for 20 minutes about the difference between quiet and cold. She listened. When she left, the kitchen smelled like baked tomatoes and olive oil and a small bit of repair. Raymond and I sat on the couch after she left. He asked what I felt. I said I felt a thread of hope and a strong desire to protect it from being pulled. He said he understood. He said that hope is a muscle too and that we would work it a little each day. Before the second forum, I took the small business card out of my purse. I had kept it near me these many weeks as a reminder that a past promise can still lift a current day. I placed the card in a simple frame. I set it on the shelf by the door. It did not look like a trophy. It looked like a compass. Pointed me toward the next right thing. Tell the truth. Bring the papers. Set the table. Invite the people who want to learn. Close the door gently on those who do not. Then open it again when they knock with better hands. The night before the forum, Marcus called. He said he had been reading about additional living expenses and wanted to share the information with 2 friends who were caring for parents. He asked if he could join the panel as a student voice who had learned in public. I thought of my first letter on his porch. I thought of the motel. I thought of the community circle and the way the room leaned toward us. I said yes. I told him he could speak for 2 minutes about what he had done wrong and 1 minute about what he had learned. He laughed once. He said that was fair. I slept that night with the window cracked. Air moved the curtain like a small breath. Morning came and I stood on the bench that faces east with my hands wrapped around a mug. I thought about revenge. I thought about the old way I understood it. Break the thing that hurt you. I thought about the new way I held it. Build the thing that makes what hurt you smaller. Make a room for truth. Put a table in it. Set out cups and cookies. Invite the people who may never have been invited to the truth before. That is the kind of revenge I wanted. It looked a lot like change. When I sat down at the table, I wrote a new list for the binder. Bring the index card. Bring the lease copy. Bring the not safe letter. Bring the receipts. Bring the piece of brick. Bring the framed card. Bring a spoon for the coffee. Bring a handkerchief in case someone else cannot speak because the words are stuck, and they need a small cloth to hold while they try again. I zipped the binder and placed it by the door. Then I called Bernice and told her the time. She said she would come. She said she would sit in the front row and hold my gaze if my voice shook. I thanked her and told her I would bring dumplings when this part of the work was done. The day spread out before me like a calm street. I walked it 1 step at a time. I wiped the counter. I watered the plant Bernice had given me. I lined up 2 mugs. I wrote a small prayer. Let my words be clean. Let my anger sit and learn. Let my son be brave. Let the room make a new thing from old pain. Let the truth take its seat and stay until everyone has eaten. The second forum filled faster than the first. Word had traveled through church emails and barber chairs and kitchen tables. The banner read, "Families that plan together stand together." The chairs were set in a gentle arc so that no one would face a wall alone. A low table at the front held pitchers of water, and a plate of cookies that released a cinnamon scent every time someone passed. The room hummed with that quiet noise that only rooms of expectation make. It sounded like paper being turned and courage being folded open. I arrived early with my binder under my arm, and the small framed card wrapped in a cloth. Raymond carried a bag with extra copies of the checklist Patrice had made. Patrice came in with a laptop and a stack of blank forms for people who wanted to gather their documents before going home. The property manager from my complex walked in with a simple smile and a clipboard that meant business. Rev Curtis greeted everyone at the door by name, or at least with a warm hello that felt like knowing. I set the framed card on the table. It did not draw attention. It watched the room the way a witness watches. Raymond placed the checklists by the pictures. Patrice set a small tabletop stand with the words "Your story matters, but your facts will help you walk across the room." The words were simple and the meaning was a rope across a river. The pastor opened with a prayer that was a kind of instruction. He asked that we speak only what belongs to us. He asked that we listen longer than we defended. He asked that we respect each other. He said that the truth will not break a person who wants to be whole. A soft amen moved across the chairs like wind through grass. The social worker spoke for a short time about the first 72 hours after crisis. She kept it simple. Breath, body, bed, paper. Call the emergency line and the insurer. Find a safe place to sleep. Begin a folder. A family member should be assigned to call for replacement identification. If there is no family nearby, a friend can play that role. She named the Red Cross and 3 local organizations that could help with short-term needs. She ended by holding up the checklist that Patrice and the property manager had assembled and said that a plan printed once can save an elder from standing at a hotel desk with only a purse and a prayer. Then the panel began. The property manager spoke about leases that can flex and companies that accept direct payment from insurers. She explained the difference between a furnished unit and a regular unit, and what items are usually covered by additional living expenses. Patrice gave the clearest explanation of policy terms I had ever heard. She told the room that every policy has a logic even if the language seems cold. She advised people to ask for the uninhabitable letter. She advised them to keep receipts but not panic about saving every small paper since a restaurant receipt is not a home. The social worker nodded at that and said, "Do not spend your energy on recreating a ledger when you still need to breathe." It was my turn. I stood and the room quieted. I introduced myself again. I said I was a neighbor and a mother and a widow and a woman who had walked through a burning house. I held up the binder and said that this had become the spine of my days for a while. I opened to the tab marked "Not Safe" letter and read the 2 sentences that mattered. Then I closed the binder. I did not want to drown the room in paper. I wanted to direct it. I wanted something else to happen that night. I wanted my son to take up a seat he had prepared for himself. He sat near the side aisle, hands folded, face clean of any smirk. He had brought a notebook. He had brought a lamp and towels last week and a basket of fruit that tasted like apology. He had asked to speak. I felt a small thread in me go taut and then relax as he stood. Marcus introduced himself as my son. He said that he worked in insurance and still did not read the situation in his own living room with a heart that was open. He said that he had thought of home as a sanctuary for 2 people only. He said that he had learned that sanctuary is not a fence that faces inward. It is an opening on both sides. He said that he was ashamed of how he had sounded when he first spoke to me after the fire. He said that he could not undo it, but he could stand in a room and say what he had done so that maybe someone else would choose better. The room listened hard. He did not explain away. He named. He said he had been afraid to lose control. He said that fear had put words in his mouth. He said that he had let those words stand for him. Then he said that he was sorry, and the apology had the feel of something placed on a table with care. He asked if he could read a short note he had written to himself. The moderator nodded. Marcus read 3 sentences that might have been the start of a new story. When your mother knocks after a fire, you do not hand her a brochure. You open the door. You listen first. You ask what kind of bed she wants and you find it within the hour. He sat down. He kept his head bowed for a moment. The room did not clap. It breathed. The moderator asked if anyone had a question for the panel or for me. A woman in a blue sweater raised her hand and asked what to do when relatives use words like boundaries to hide a refusal. Patrice answered without flinching. She said that boundaries are holy when used to prevent harm and to protect both parties. She said that when boundaries are used to step away from love in the first hour of need, we call that abandonment by a softer name. She suggested that families plan the first 2 nights as a non-negotiable act, and then discuss longer-term boundaries on day 3 with clear heads. The moderator glanced at me. I said that her answer was the answer. I added that the first night my neighbor put a blanket on my shoulders and did not ask for a plan. She gave me breath and a couch. Plans can come after a glass of water. Alana raised her hand. The room shifted a little. She stood and spoke in a voice that looked like the one she uses when she wants things to go a certain way. The difference now was a tremor that did not look like performance. She said that she was the woman who had said sanctuary and privacy and routine while I stood inside her living room with smoke still in my hair. She said that she had used those words like a shield. She said that she wanted to apologize to me and to this room for modeling the wrong use of good language. She said that she had not wanted to become responsible for a crisis she did not cause. She said that she now understood that love is not a closed circuit. She sat down. The moderator nodded at her without praise or scorn. He kept the room steady. He asked the social worker to offer a short script for those first difficult minutes. She did. It was simple. I am sorry. You can stay here tonight. We will talk in the morning. We will call the insurer and get your policy number. We will make a list. Then the person in need can add a sentence. I need a bed and a shower and a quiet hour. The room murmured yes under breath. The questions moved to practical notes. A man asked how to request replacement medication when a pharmacy has closed for the night. The social worker named an urgent care line and a 24-hour pharmacy. Patrice added that some insurers have emergency response units with case managers who can authorize short fills. The property manager explained how to document the contents of a refrigerator when a power outage spoils food, and how that might be treated under coverage. Details mattered. Details rescue people when feelings want to flood the room. Then the moderator asked if any community members wanted to speak to what they had done in the first week that truly helped a neighbor or a parent. Mrs. Bernice stood in her lavender cardigan and held the microphone the way a person holds a teacup. She said that she had given me a couch and a blanket and a recipe tin. The room laughed gently at the recipe tin. She said that feeding memory is as important as feeding the body. She said that later she would bring a plant and 3 wooden spoons, and that this was her way of saying that a kitchen could be rebuilt without money at first. She sat down and I felt my throat thicken in the kind way. The moderator closed the questions and asked the pastor to say a short word before the final exercise. Rev Curtis spoke about the difference between exposure and humiliation. He said that our room tonight was about light, not heat. He said that we were not here to shame anyone. We were here to make shame unnecessary by giving people a way to act right before they had to make excuses for acting wrong. He said that truth without gentleness can harden a heart. He said that gentleness without truth can rot a home. He asked the room to hold both. For the exercise we broke into small circles. Each circle included a checklist, a pen, and someone who could help with forms. I sat with Patrice and 3 families. We filled out names and numbers. We wrote policy numbers and dates. We wrote the name of a friend who would keep spare keys. We wrote the name of a pharmacy and a doctor. We wrote the number for the Red Cross. We wrote the number for the insurer into 2 phones and pinned it. We wrote down which neighbor would be called first if an elder did not answer the door by 9 in the morning. Paper grew into a small net that could catch a future fall. While we worked, I felt a shift in the room. It was not loud. It was the feeling of 30 people moving from helpless to prepared. Marcus came by our table and asked if he could take a stack of checklists to his office. Patrice handed him a pile and said, "Take more." Alana asked the property manager a half-dozen questions about accessibility and first-floor units and how to prove uninhabitable status. The property manager answered without a hint of superiority. She had lived through a fire as a child. She said that she remembers what smoke does to the voice of a house. After the exercise, the pastor invited short testimonies in 2 sentences. People stood and spoke sentences that sounded like nails in wood. We will keep a copy of our policy at church. We will place a spare set of keys at Aunt Ruth's house. We will start a call tree. We will make soup for the first week. We will not use fancy words to hide from hard work. I watched the room build a language that could hold what might come. Then the moment that would sit inside me for a long time arrived. The moderator asked if anyone had something they wanted to place on the front table, as a symbol of a decision. I stood with the framed card. I did not make a speech. I said that this card had carried a 7-word promise inside 3 simple words. Come home was the heart of it. I said that for a while I had thought home was a place with one door. I said that now I believe home is a decision we make toward one another. I placed the frame on the table. It did not gleam. It held steady. Marcus stood and walked to the table. He placed his notebook beside the frame. He said that it held a letter to himself about what to do the next time someone he loves is in need. He said that he did not want to forget. He looked up and met my eyes. I nodded. It felt like watching a line get drawn that we could both follow. Alana came forward with a folded sheet of paper. She said that she had made a list of what she would bring to a parent in the first hour if a crisis came. She named 3 things: water, a phone charger, a blanket. She placed the paper beside the notebook. It was not dramatic. It was enough. The pastor closed the night by asking us to stand in a circle. We held hands. The room went quiet. He thanked God for the truth. He asked for strong backs and soft voices. He asked for mercy that does not excuse and justice that does not crush. He said amen and the room answered. People lined up to take the checklists. A few asked me to sign their copies, which felt strange and sweet. I signed with my name and the date. Felt like saying I was here and it mattered. The property manager collected names for a follow-up call. Patrice scheduled 2 small clinics at the community center for next month. The social worker wrote 3 referrals. Work had been born and it was alive before we left the room. Outside, the night felt kind. The air had cooled in a way that made walking to the car a grace. Marcus walked beside me for a few steps. He did not rush to fill the air. He said that his office would host a lunch and learn about ALE and basic claims education for employees who care for elders. He asked if I would come speak for 5 minutes and then sit while their claims specialist answered technical questions. I said yes. We stood near the car door, and he said a sentence that changed the shape of what we had been carrying. He said, "I am proud of you." It landed in my chest like a light object that still hits hard because of what it means. Alana came up and handed me a small card with a number for a therapist who works with families around aging and crisis. She said she and Marcus had booked a session. She said that if I wanted a separate session, she would pay for it as a gesture. I thanked her and said that I would think about it. I told her that generosity is a good practice. Raymond drove us home with the framed card buckled in the back seat like a child. We laughed at that and then grew quiet. I held the binder and felt less need to grip. He reached over at a stoplight and placed his hand over mine for a brief moment. He did not need to say anything. The hand said, "You did what you came to do." At home we set the card on the hall table. I made tea. We sat and let the night end itself. I felt tired in the way that honest work makes you tired. I slept with the window open. In the morning I walked to the bench with my mug and a pen and wrote a single sentence on an index card. Public light heals what private denial keeps sick. I placed that card in the binder, right next to the not safe letter. Felt like a pair. One named what had been. The other named what could be. That afternoon the pastor called. He said that a local radio program wanted to talk about the forum. He said they had heard not about drama but about clarity, and wanted to share the checklist and the simple scripts that had helped. He asked if I would join for 3 minutes by phone. I said yes. He said that I would simply tell a few lines of my story and talk about the first night rule. I said I would keep it as plain as bread. The radio spot aired the next morning. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone on speaker and a mug beside a folded napkin. The host asked gentle questions. I answered in sentences that did not try to sell anything. When she asked for the line that I wanted listeners to keep, I said these words. When a mother knocks after a fire, you open your door and your heart for one night, and then you build a plan with her. The host repeated the line and thanked me. Raymond raised his coffee in a small toast. We smiled like people who had watched a thing grow from ash into grain. Later that day my phone buzzed with messages from people I had not spoken to in years. Some sent heart emojis. Some sent prayers. Some sent questions. I answered what I could and pointed them to Patrice for the hard parts. A woman from my church circle wrote that she had printed the checklist and placed a copy in her freezer in a plastic bag and another in her glove compartment. She wrote that it made her feel less afraid. I wrote back that fear loses air when it has to walk around a plan. In the early evening, I sat with Bernice at my small table. She tasted one of the cookies from the forum that I had wrapped and brought home. She said that public truth is a strong medicine and we had measured the dose well. She asked me how my heart felt. I said that it was sore the way a muscle gets after it has been used for the first time in a long while. She said that soreness means you are building something. She kissed my cheek and told me to rest. Before bed, I walked to the hall table and touched the frame. I thought of 12 words. You cannot buy dignity and you cannot brand compassion. I did not say them out loud. I did not have to. They lived in the room the way a scent lives without being named. The next morning, I woke to sunlight that seemed to know my name. I stood on the bench and watched the day arrive. I thought about how exposure had not destroyed anyone. It had asked us to look. It had asked us to name. It had given us a way to walk forward with more honest feet. I made a small breakfast and set the table for two. Raymond came in with the paper. He handed me the local section. There was a small piece about the forum. It was not dramatic. It did not mention a millionaire or a scandal. It mentioned a checklist and a community that had decided to build a habit of care. I folded the paper and placed it under the mug as a kind of coaster. The ink left a faint mark on the wood. I liked that. Morning began to arrive like a visitor who knows how to knock. I woke before the alarm and stood at the window with my first cup of coffee. The bench faced the light as it always did. Birds fussed at the thin trees. The apartment smelled faintly of soap and cinnamon from Patrice cookies that I had wrapped in foil and placed by the sink. I felt the kind of tired that comes after good work. It did not scare me. It told me that something inside had done what it was made to do, and now needed rest. I wrote a short list with my breakfast. Thank Bernice for the wooden spoons. Call the contractor for a ballpark number. Check with the insurer about the next inspection. Buy a lamp for the bedroom. Email the radio host with a thank you. Plans were my small stones laid in a neat line. They helped me keep the path when the mind wanted to wander. Near noon, Marcus called and asked if I had time to meet at the apartment community courtyard. He said he wanted to bring me a copy of a basic care plan he had made for emergencies. I went down and found him sitting on the low brick wall that framed a small garden. He wore a sweater I had not seen before. He looked both older and younger than he had last month. He rose when I arrived and handed me a folder. Inside was a one-page plan with simple lines. First step, call. Second step, food and bed. Third step, paperwork. Fourth step, prayer. At the bottom he had written a sentence that stopped me. If I forget step 1 or 2, remind me of who I want to be. I put a hand on his arm. He allowed it. We sat and talked about simple things. Weather. Work. Soup. Then he said the thing that mattered. He said he had started therapy with Alana, and that the sessions were showing him where fear had been bossing him around like a narrow hallway. He said he did not want to live in a small hallway anymore. I said I was glad. I said I would not grade his progress. I said I would notice it. Later that week, the contractor met Patrice and me at the lot that used to be my house. He wore sturdy boots and a calm face. He walked the space and spoke in the language of boards and permits and timelines. He gave a range that made me nod slowly. He said the rebuild would take more months than any heart finds comfortable. He said the number would be higher than insurance alone. He did not promise what he could not promise. Patrice asked 3 neat questions and took notes. I stood where my kitchen door once opened to a small porch and looked out at a patch of empty air that used to hold a wind chime. The contractor said that some people choose not to rebuild. He said some folks choose to start over in a smaller shape. He said that the heart decides and the numbers follow. I said I would decide after I had slept on the question for a few nights. He nodded and shook my hand with a grip that had strength and respect in it. On the drive back, Raymond was quiet for a while. Then he said he had an idea he wanted to place on the table without pressure. He said that a small piece of land near his home had come up for purchase. He said that he had been thinking for years about building a cottage where someone he loved might live if they needed a place that was both near and their own. He said that if I wanted, we could buy the land together, share the cost, build a simple home with a kitchen that knew how to hold a Sunday supper. He said that my name would be on the deed, and that the door would open with a key that had my name on it as well. He said this and then looked straight ahead, giving me room to breathe. I watched the trees slide past and considered the feeling that rose in my chest. It was not the old fear of dependency. It was not the old suspicion that generosity comes with chains. It felt like the steady lift that comes when two people carry a heavy box together without arguing about whose hands get tired first. I asked how the numbers would work. He spoke in plain sentences. He would cover the land. I would cover a portion of the build. We would set a clear agreement with Patrice's help, a record of who owns what and how any future change would be handled with respect. I asked for 2 days to think and to pray. He said take 3. I called Bernice and told her the outline. She made a glad sound and then grew practical. She said to make sure the windows faced the morning, and that the kitchen had a pantry that could hold jars for jam and beans. She said to ask for a porch where a woman can sit and string green beans with another woman who knows how to talk about the weather until they are ready to talk about pain. I wrote porch in my notebook and circled it twice. Patrice called later and said she would draft a simple agreement to review when I was ready. She said that love made honest tends to last. I took my time with the choice. I walked the apartment and tried to hear what the walls would say if they could talk. They said we have held you well, and we can let you go when you have a new key in your hand. I sat on the bench and watched the light. Morning came and named me again. Called Raymond and said yes. He did not whoop or boast. He said thank you for trusting me. He said let us build a small home for a life that is ready for calm seasons. The next weeks became a soft hum of steps. Patrice drew up papers that set us both at ease. The land purchase moved forward. The architect, a woman with eyes that saw both beauty and cost, sat with us and asked how we lived. I told her that I cook soups and read on a couch and like a bedroom quiet enough to hear rain. Raymond told her that he needs a place for his books, and a table for morning coffee that looks out at trees. She sketched while we spoke. A small living room that opens to a porch. A kitchen where 2 people can move without bumping. A bedroom that says welcome without shouting. Windows that make the morning an honored guest. The architect smiled and said we were building a house that hoped for peace. While the plans took shape, life continued. Marcus came by once a week. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he brought a joke that did not land and then landed later when we both remembered it at the same time. He did not push for control. He asked if I wanted him to call the insurer or if I wanted to make the call myself. When I asked him to assist, he took notes and sent me summaries by email so that my folder stayed complete. He spoke with respect. I answered with clarity. We were learning the steps of a new dance that did not require anyone to pretend they did not have a past. Alana brought meals twice. The second time she set the dish on the counter and asked if she could sit for a moment. I said yes. She said that therapy had pulled a rug up and she was looking at the floorboards. She said that she had learned that control had been her blanket, and that she had used that blanket to cover things she did not want to hear. She said that she was sorry for speaking to me as if I were a storm instead of a person. I said that apology is a door and we were standing in it. I said that she could come through if she chose and that the room on the other side had a table with 2 chairs. She cried a little. I handed her a tissue and then handed her a slice of pie. Food has a way of saying what words find heavy. The small publicity around the forum brought calls to Patrice's office from 2 other churches. She asked if I would join another panel in a month. I agreed. This was not fame. It was responsibility. I had walked through a fire and found a kind of map. It felt right to hand copies of the map to others, even if the paper left smudges on my fingers. The cottage build was not quick. Permits asked for patience. Weather asked for patience. Life asked for patience. I learned that patience is not a sigh, it is a muscle. We visited the site on Saturdays. I brought a thermos of coffee and 2 cups. Raymond walked the lines the surveyor had marked and talked about trees. He spoke to the crew with a tone that recognized their skill. He did not wave his success like a flag. He let his respect do the talking. I stood where the porch would be and tried to imagine a string of mornings rising up to meet me across that open space. I could hear the rhythm of a life that did not ask me to prove anything. In the middle of all this work, the letter from the insurer arrived with the next check. It was not the final piece, but it was a good piece. I held the envelope with 2 hands for a full minute before I opened it. Then I placed the check in my folder and wrote thank you on the inside corner to remind myself who to thank for every door that opened. God, neighbors, professionals who did their jobs with care, and my own older hands that had learned how to keep steady even when a pen felt heavy. A month later the frame went up. A beam was lifted and set, and the sound it made settled into me like a hymn. Bernice and Marcus came to watch. The crew laughed when Bernice clapped as if someone had finished a solo. She said she could clap for a beam as easily as for a singer. Marcus stood close to me but not touching. He said it felt good to watch a thing rise. He said it felt like we were not trying to get back what we had lost but making room for what could be next. I squeezed his hand. He let me. The porch floorboards arrived and were set. I stepped onto the wood and felt it answer with a small song. The architect smiled and said the boards were good ones. She said the song meant they would hold stories. I imagined a small table with 2 mugs and a plate of something sweet. I imagined a quilt over my knees in late fall. I imagined a child visiting in summer with a sticky face and a question. Hope is a kind of design also. Raymond asked me one quiet evening if I would consider a private ceremony in the garden when the house was finished. He said that he had waited a lifetime to find a day that felt like this. He said that he wanted to say vows in the presence of a few people who knew how to hold joy without breaking it. He said there would be no big performance. He said there would be a pastor, 2 witnesses, a simple cake, and a promise that fit our age and our faith. I listened, and the quiet inside me answered yes before my mouth did. I said yes with my mouth and felt the echo in my chest. We chose a date that would not rush anyone. We asked the architect for an estimate and gave the crew time. We asked the pastor to choose a scripture that spoke of endurance and calm. We asked Bernice to bring the recipe tin so that it could sit on the porch railing like a true guest. We asked Marcus to attend. We told Alana that there would be no room for scenes, only for community. She nodded and said she understood. She asked if she could bake a pan of rolls. I said yes. Good bread belongs at important tables. The day came with clear light. A few chairs were placed on the grass. The porch held the small framed business card that had carried me across the motel nights. The card did not look old anymore. It looked earned. The pastor spoke simply. He talked about 2 people arriving at a season where promise means practice. He asked us to speak our vows. I told Raymond that he had listened to me when I needed to speak long and speak slow. I told him that he had carried boxes and plans without treating me like another box to be moved. I told him that he had brought me coffee and courage, and that I would bring him steadiness and soup. He told me that my presence had turned rooms into home. He told me that my truth had kept his pride from making foolish choices. He told me that he would guard my dignity the way some men guard their reputation. We both cried a little. The pastor pronounced us married. Bernice clapped again, softer like a blessing. After the ceremony we ate on the porch. The rolls Alana brought were perfect. Marcus hugged me and said the sentence I had hoped for. He said that he was happy for my joy, not just relieved at my safety. There is a difference. Relief is an exhale. Joy is a steady breath that keeps on. I felt the difference like a new rhythm inside my ribs. Late in the afternoon the small group walked the property line. The air smelled like cut wood and cake. The sun slid lower. I looked at the cottage and saw a life under construction that was not a project but a promise. I saw rooms where quiet would not feel like silence. I saw a kitchen where broth would simmer while someone talked about their day. I saw a bedroom where the open window would carry the sound of rain to a woman who could finally sleep without counting fears. We moved into the cottage a month later. The first night we sat on the porch with 2 mugs and a blanket between us. The stars did not blink in a fancy way. They simply held. I placed the small framed card on a shelf by the door. It sat beside a photograph of Robert that I keep near to honor the story that brought me to every step. Grief and joy can sit on the same shelf without fighting if you dust them both. In the new rhythm I kept a gentle schedule. Morning on the bench. 10 minutes of quiet. 15 minutes of planning. A walk among the trees if weather allowed. A call to Bernice once a week. A note to Marcus on Sundays if church had made me think a thought he should hear. Visits from neighbors who had stood in a circle and made promises to themselves. Visits from women at church who wanted to talk about policy numbers and recipes in the same breath. It pleased me that my table could hold both. Marcus and I went to a family therapist for a few sessions. We learned how to talk without building a case. We learned how to apologize without a speech. We learned to say I was wrong followed by a period and a plan for not doing the wrong thing again. Alana joined and did not turn the hour into a presentation. She came honest. We were not perfect. We did not need to be. We knew where the door was if we started to argue. We knew how to step outside and look at the sky until our voices remembered their jobs. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the insurer marking the closing of the claim. The numbers were final. They were not a windfall. They were a tool. I placed the letter beside the framed card. The two pieces of paper felt related. One was a promise from a past heart. One was a promise from a policy that had been read line by patient people. Both had carried me when the ground under my feet had stopped behaving. People sometimes ask me now what the lesson was. I think they hope for a line that fits on a magnet. I can offer a few. Truth walks on its own feet. Dignity is not furniture. Sanctuary is a choice we make toward each other, and we can make it with a couch and a casserole and a key handed without ceremony. Boundaries protect love. They do not excuse neglect. Paperwork is not cold. It is a kind of mercy that gives pain a path. Community is not a hobby. It is how we live without becoming hard or hollow. The last time I visited the old lot, I stood for a minute and touched the trunk of the tree that had watched my house burn and my life bend. I told it thank you for the shade it had given me in summers past. I told it I would not visit again often. I told it that goodbye is also a form of respect. Then I walked back to the car and did not look over my shoulder. Some chapters deserve a soft door that closes without a click. At home, I set a pot on the stove and cut onions and carrots and celery in the pattern my grandmother taught me. Raymond came in with the mail and a quiet laugh. He kissed the top of my head and asked if I needed anything. I said, taste and tell me if the salt is right. He tasted and he smiled. It was right. We ate at the table with the late light on our plates. The room felt full, but it was not crowded. It was full of breath. When the dishes were done, I sat with a piece of paper and wrote a note to the future. I wrote that I have been many things. Daughter, wife, widow, mother, woman in smoke, woman with a folder, woman on a bench, wife again. I wrote that I had learned to let the light in even when it showed dust. I wrote that I had learned how to let my son apologize without punishing him for arriving late to his own better self. I wrote that I would keep the binder neat, the porch swept, the coffee ready for whoever needed to sit and plan their first 72 hours of a new life. Before I end this chapter with you, let me ask you something the way I did at the start. Did this story meet you where you live? If it did, subscribe so you can sit with me again. Tell me the city you are listening from. It comforts me to know that a voice can cross streets and states and oceans and find another heart at the right time. We will keep telling the truth together. We will keep setting tables for it. We will keep choosing a sanctuary that is made of open doors and steady hands.